Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Happy to be sitting with you today for this webinar. Thank you, Ina, for this kind introduction. So it's a pleasure to be here today with Jean-Marc Nasr from Airbus Defence Space to talk about sustainability of space. Hi, Jean-Marc. How are you doing?
I'm good. Hello, Steve. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you sharing this webinar and discuss those questions.
Thank you. So just maybe a few words as an introduction. I'll be brief, but as you all know, this is a topic of, I would say, growing importance as the changes and transformation in how stakeholders are using space brings obviously major business opportunities, but also significant challenges with respect to sustainability of space. And obviously we can talk about constellations, but this is one example, but among others. So we will discuss with you, Jean-Marc, how you see as an executive in a world-leading space company these issues around space sustainability. And I would say from various angles, because I believe that there are different ways to look at this question. So we'll see how we can discuss various topics around the issue, the broad issue of sustainability. We have a short time, 30 minutes, but again, I really encourage you who are watching us to ask questions, and I'll make sure that I pick questions on the fly as we'll discuss with Jean-Marc. So let's talk and start with the discussion. Maybe if you're okay with this, Jean-Marc, what I'd like is to open up the discussion with I would say maybe a more general question, just to get your sense on where the business is going, because I think these have impacts on the question of sustainability later on. So obviously the commercial space environment is moving very fast. We are in kind of shifting moment in the industry, turning point, radical transformations from market drivers, system architectures deployed, business models along the value chain. So there's really like a kind of moment of really shifts in the industry. So in this context, in this evolving context, where do you see your top or the top opportunities and the top challenges from the industry? I know this is a pretty broad question. We could spend half an hour only on this, but what I'd like to see and to know is what is really catching your interest and your focus today in terms of the major opportunities, the major risks you see today for the industry, really what is catching your attention, and how a company like Airbus, which is a historical company, can benefit from this evolving ecosystem?
A good question indeed, and it could take a long time to answer. But if I want to start, I would say that we are in the world has changed in the last 2 years. First, we had the COVID crisis, right? And this COVID crisis has impacted the industry at large, and not too much space. Why not too much space? Because space is definitely seen now as an enabler for communication, data gathering, which is extremely important for humanity and for our societies. And I think we've gone from a space which was more seen as a useful thing or something triggered by research into something which is mandatory and cannot be avoided any longer. So there is a tailwind on what we do. We see it now, it's there. We have the attention of the public on space. The public is more adamant about space, what it makes, what it does. Even if I'm not too much a fan of space tourism, I don't think it's probably useful to have a couple of billionaires doing 45 laps around the Earth on a capsule, but okay, this is a different thing. But clearly we see startups being motivated to go for space, and that's a real asset, and we are working with many of them. I think those small companies can really bring disruptive ideas and technologies. That being said, space remains a very unfriendly area to operate. And when it is to offer reliable services to demanding customers, there is a big gap between having a nice satellite in orbit doing beep beep and a system which delivers a service which is valid for a lot. So that the opportunities are big and we are following them. On the risk side, supply chain is clearly something we look at the risk because it has been disrupted by the COVID crisis. It is not disrupted by the triple parts shortages that we see around the planet. And it's also disrupted by the fact that the countries are not always open or closed. The COVID regulations are varying from a country to another and it's difficult to manage. Second risk I see is that there is a kind of a far west attitude, if I must say, that everybody can launch anything in space. There are rules in space, and my big worry is that we should not do to space what we did to our oceans. And we should make sure that this asset is still a safe asset to work in. And at the moment, what I see is not telling me we're going that direction. So regulations is needed. If we don't regulate, and we start to have collisions in space, or if we have to start to have, let's say, hostile acts done in space, it can make the orbit unexploitable for 40, 50 years. This will put us out of business. So I think managing properly the resource, which is space is a resource for what I see in my business, is also very important, and the risks are high.
Okay, so this is actually coming to the issue of space sustainability. Coming back on how a company like Airbus can benefit from this ecosystem in terms of partnerships, as you were saying, maybe in terms of enhancing the services that could have been maybe developed by the startup at the and bringing them maybe more to a more mature phase. I mean, can you explain how you are dealing with this new ecosystem? Where do you see companies like you and your peers basically in these in the development of this new environment, new commercial or sectoral environment?
So there are two segments. There is a manufacturing segment, which is the upstream part with satellite manufacturers and launch manufacturers. Here, honestly, the level, the barrier to entry is really high. So we see startups trying to operate in the launch sector and do things, and some startups operating in the satellite sector, but it's still very limited, much more on demonstrating things than doing operational things. And we work with many of them. So we welcome this, and as an integrator, we see that as an opportunity. We can attract them, work with them, deliver new equipments with them, and we do that. On the downstream, which is a service part, exploitation of data, here it's absolutely positive what we see. There are many companies that are exploiting space data and making services for the end user, and we see that very positively. Definitely, we want to make our data available to them. We are building up demonstrators with them, and I think this has no end, because I am absolutely convinced that the use of space will go far beyond what we see today in the future, and we are very lucky to have this downstream sector developing as we see at the moment. So it's something we will continue to work with in the future. Of course, in some applications, we'll have limitations because of classification or defense aspect that we are also dealing with. The space is also very strong defense and security asset for nations, and we work for them. But the commercial world is opening, and it's an opportunity. So we see that everywhere, and we are motivating that, and we are also taking shares into startup. We are also investing into startup R&D money to make them work for us, with us, and I think it's extremely positive. Okay.
Right. Let's move now to the question of the specific question of space sustainability, and maybe starting from the angle of environmental space sustainability, space as an environment. First question, I would say classic. Do you consider that the sustainability in the low Earth orbit is currently at risk with the constellations, and especially the mega constellations? Say differently, do you see the mega constellations de facto leading to an appropriation, basically, of the low Earth orbit?
I think there is a risk indeed on this, because LEO constellations are, when we see the number of satellites that we launched today, we have something like 3,000 satellites active in space. In 10 years, we think we'll be at 50,000 satellites. Many of them will be in LEO. It requires regulations. If there is no regulation in this, we will have issues in managing the spectrum that are emitted by the satellites, managing also the physical setup of satellites, making sure that every operator of a satellite in LEO has embedded into its satellites what is necessary to deorbit them when they are end of life. So this is at the moment there is a space law which is mandatory for everyone, but is everyone respecting the law? I'm not sure. Space has no borders, so whoever is launching a satellite is an actor in space, and at the moment I'm extremely concerned with this going forward. I think it's we will see collisions. I think it's inevitable. I would like that to avoid that, but I don't think we will in the long term. It will happen, and the consequences of such a thing would be dramatic for space. So we need to make sure we everyone understand that space is an asset that we co-share. It's a business area on which we operate. We must keep it clean, keep it safe. And at the moment, it's not really what's happening. It's more a race to occupy the space as soon as we can to operate constellation. And here I am calling for a worldwide response to this. So there are many ideas around to clean it and make it cleaner. I think we have demonstrated us in Airbus that we've done that in the past. We can do it again. We've seen Northrop Grumman with the MEV experiment showing that we can go and capture debris and also dock on satellites. So there are many areas where we can operate. That being said, it's a worldwide problem and we need to tackle it together. So it's a concern, and I think there is a need for a wake-up call globally around the planet to make sure that our business area is kept safe.
We'll see some of the solutions that you may see that you would consider potentially to be implemented to solve this issue. But if we consider that there is a risk in this area, do you see that there is a kind of contradiction, I would say, between two pursuits in today in the sector? On the one hand, the democratization of space, which is imposed by new space. And on the other hand, the protection of the LEO environment. So how to make the reconciliation between these two objectives, I would say, right? Maintaining the environment safe, but in the meantime, democratization of space. What is the trade-off between the two? Is it?
I'm not sure we can speak of a democratization of space when it comes to LEO constellations. Okay. Who is operating in this area? There is Starlink, with the deep pocket of Mr. Musk and his adventure, which is absolutely amazing. What do I see? There is OneWeb, which is, we are building satellites and we're launching them. We are very careful with what we do. And this is sustained by government, which is the government of UK, and also now Eutelsat that has joined the thing. So it's not done by people that are newcomers. Mm-hmm. What I mean, they are there for long, and there is no new space. I don't believe in the new space word. Doesn't mean anything to me. If you call new space private money into space, you're right. But this is done by all the present actors today. We and others are invested massively into space. Airbus has invested €1 billion into space in the last 10 years, creating the Pleiad Neo constellation. So it's about private money being there. I think if it's in the hands of people that know what space is and know how to regulate it, there is no issue. So there must be a rule that when someone wants to enter into the space, in the LEO space area, there are rules to follow. There are regulations to follow, and there is a way to do business in there in a safe way. So this is what we are calling, and I think it will happen because it's in the end it's the interest of everyone. Only if we start to see terrorism in space, this will disrupt, because terrorists has no interest of sustaining the activity, but all business actors, being governmental or private, have the same interest that space is a way to operate. So I can tell you with OneWeb, because this is a LEO constellation we launch at the moment together with the operator, we build satellite in our JV AOS. We are extremely careful what we do. Every orbit raising we do is carefully monitored. We are very, very careful what we do, and we continue to be doing that. If we do that way, I think there is no contradiction, and I think the LEO area could be operated safely in the future. But this, again, as I said, must be respected by anyone else. Mm. And especially when small companies will want to launch small satellites as ride shares onto launchers, they must be regulated as well, because when they launch something in space, they become responsible for what they do, be it for demonstrations or an operational activity. And for this, the reliability of the platform is key. The reliability of the payload, the way you operate is key. And there is a cost for this, and so we must be careful that we do what is required to operate safely in this hostile environment, which is space, and not launch things just to launch things. Because if you do that, then the risk is really high.
So what are the solutions? You were talking about some regulations. So maybe you can expand a little bit your thoughts about this, because it's always difficult to regulate on the national basis. If you have to, like everybody basically, they has to regulate on the same way, not to interfere or to provide some to create some kind of this competitive advantage and some competitive disadvantage in some areas and so on. So there is always the issue on how to make this kind of worldwide acceptance of the regulation. So how do you see the possibility to have this kind of regulation emerging? What's the role of governments in this? And let's talk first about regulation and maybe about potentially about other means.
There have been several regulations and laws already existing. In 1967, the governments have decided that there is no weapons in space. At this time, this treaty has been signed by all countries at this time, but almost all countries in the world. But in 1967, space was not really an area where you do business. But the idea at this time was not to embark weapons against the Earth on space, and not weapons between satellites, but more against the Earth. This treaty is still active and must be respected. Because I think an hostile act in space would be a real disaster. So I think I would like space to be a peaceful place where there is no war, no space wars. If you want to follow my, so I would like this to happen, but can I decide this by myself? No, it's a government decision. Mm-hmm. Second, I think there are laws. I think we are embarking now in our satellites. Every satellite launched in space must have on board what is needed to deorbit at the end of lifetime. So there is no debris staying, or there is the necessary let's say, fuel on board to either park the satellite or the graveyard or to deorbit it in the atmosphere. This must be respected by all nations. So what I'm calling here is somehow, I don't know if it's a UN regulation or because it's already existing, but that every launch company around the world must be checking this, because the satellite goes to space through a launcher. There are not that many launchers, and it must be reflected through that. So I don't have the solution on this, because the nations are all independent. They are doing what they want. But clearly, it's a call for a global, let's say, convergence of the nations into what must be done to safeguard our business area. And I think it's possible, but if we hammer it, if we speak of it between us, if all agencies of the world, space agencies of the world, are sharing the same views, I am confident it will work. But it must be clearly said. The question is that we will increase the number of satellites by 45,000 in the next 10 years. So it's about that. So how do we do that? Do we regulate properly? Do we agree on how to do things? This is what we need to do. And I don't have a solution as a manufacturer. I'm only a company. I'm not a government, but I am hammering in the European governments where I'm operating about it. I get a lot of echo about this from ESA, from the European Commission. I'm looking forward to seeing the US joining the crowd, and I think they are. And then the other big player is China, and China also should show a willingness to do this. At the moment, I think it's still under question, and we need to continue to work together to make it happen.
You were talking about space debris mitigation. In your experience in talking with customers and with companies developing these kind of solutions, what is the business model on this? Because there's always a lot of questions about the commercial acceptance on the space debris space debris solution. What is how do you see the solution, or do you believe that is actually that we are going to see this kind of solutions and services actually generalized? And what are the opportunities and challenges associated to this?
Well, if I want to be provocative a bit, I would say that space sustainability is not a business; it's a must. So it's a range, which it's
a regulation.
Yeah, it's not. So it's not a. If at some point we need to spend money to make sure this doesn't happen, and we are protecting our environment, I think it's the role of the governments to put in place what is needed to operate safely. I think it's about that. So is it a business? Maybe that we can have operators in the future that can do that for governments, but the elements that needs to be in place industrially, commercially to operate safely, this is a question of sovereignty and a global regulation. So I think it's not a business yet. Will it be a business one day? Maybe. Cleaning the oceans is somehow a business today, even if it's not extremely successful the way I see it, but I think people speak of it. But exactly take the parallel with the oceans. Do you see today ships that are cleaning the oceans for the good of mankind? Not yet. Not yet. Maybe our oceans are not dirty enough that we do this, but at some point we'll have to do it whatever happens. And it's too bad that we have to wait for that it's absolutely necessary to do it. We should do it earlier. I'm calling for investment being done by the governments as early as possible to avoid that. I think it is also the will of ESA. I think we see it. ESA has already contracted a company to do some kind of this. We have seen also the US doing that. So it starts to happen now. We need to accelerate.
I'm picking a question on the Q&A. Would you endorse a moratorium on LEO constellations satellite launches until new global regulations are established for space sustainability? So is that a solution to impose a moratorium?
I don't know. I think it's. I don't. I cannot answer that question straightforward like this. I think it's for us, as I said in the beginning, we look forward to seeing a global acceptance of these regulations to be the table. It's not existing today. As an operator, as a manufacturer, I'm not alone. There are other manufacturers that are operating in that business. But I think we are all in agreement that we need to have a safe business in there. The satellite operators are also key into this, and we need to work with them, and the launch companies. I think the three of us together should agree on this together. How fast it will go, how quick it will happen, I cannot say. What I'm told you is that I'm in favor of regulations, and if it has to go through a moratorium, I'm happy to sign for it.
So, what should be the role of the commercial industry and of the industry with respect to this protection of long-term sustainability? Proposing solutions, testing solutions, taking some initiatives prior to regulations. How do you see your role as Airbus? What is your role and with your peers as well from the industry? How do you see the role of industry on this?
I think the role of industry, I think if I look at my industry, which is the manufacturing, is first to clearly identify the risk and make them clear. We are building satellites today, GEO, MEO, LEO satellites. We build OneWeb together with the operator. We know what are the risks into this, and putting on the table the risk we see and making our governments and regulators extremely adamant about what it is and clear about it is our first role. Second, we have to propose options and solutions to do it right, and we have several solutions. In the past, we had our Space Tug initiative to do this, and it was technically feasible. It was too early, and the business case didn't work, didn't close for us. So we didn't invest to make it happen. As I said, if it becomes a sovereign act to be done by governments to keep space sustainable, money will be there. At some point, it will be there. We'll see. As we see today, that on the hydrogen, the decarbonization of the industry, on the airplane and the cars, it is happening because there is no choice. When there is no choice, money is there. So I'm absolutely conscious that money will come because it will be a good investment to operate in space. And here, the technical solutions exist in the big manufacturers, also in some smaller ones. And it will be. I am calling for a teaming between us because nobody can do it by itself alone. No country can do it by itself. I think it's I don't know if it's a stupid proposition, but I would call for kind of a consortium of people concerned with this problem and joining force together to make it happen. Both governments and industry into this. It's time to do it now. It's not time to do this in 10 years when we'll have 50,000 satellites above our head.
There is a question about the European initiative in SST, which is now part of the European Commission program regulation. How do you see the role of the commercial industry with the European SST initiative, especially considering the situation in the US, where there is a much more maybe a commercial approach to solutions? Are you in favor of a more commercial approach in Europe towards SST?
No, I'm not in favor of that. I don't think in the US the SST approach is commercial either. I think there are experiments like the one that has been demonstrated recently, but I really think it should not be commercial. If it becomes commercial, it's again going to be regulated by the profit we can make on it, and we will not do the right things. I think it's probably something that must be regulated by the big players, so the European Commission for sure, ESA, together with them. The NASA is also doing that in the US. And I think the commercial side of it, us as companies, we are here to offer solutions and make sure we do things. So I'm not too much in favor of the commercialization of SST. I don't see it as as an enabler to make it happen fast. I think I would call for, I don't know how to put it, but for our governments telling us, you cannot do this, you have to do that way. And at the moment, I don't see that. It's too early, probably.
Okay. We are already almost done. It's passing. It's going very. There is another aspect that we haven't discussed, which is more about the business sustainability. Coming back to the market environment, and we are seeing lots of ventures, new projects, startups deploying constellations, concepts, new launch vehicles, like hundreds of projects. Only obviously a few will materialize in the long term, I would say. But when and they're also attracting a lot of appetite from venture capital. We are breaking records year after year in terms of investment and so on. So no, it's more the question about the business sustainability. Do you consider that there is a risk of I would say financial bubble, I would say, in the industry, and would that create a risk with respect to the sustainability of the space business when you see all these initiatives and these overvaluation, I would say, in the sector right now?
No, I'm not afraid at all for space. Space business will grow massively. The thing has started. You know, the tailwind we have now will not stop. Space is mandatory. Every one of us, you, me, are using space 15 times a day on your smartphone, and there is no way back. There is no way back about it, and I'm absolutely confident it will continue to grow. That being said, I said that what I said at the beginning. It's not a nice environment to operate with. It is a place where you cannot go and fix a satellite. When it's launched in space, it's launched in space. It has to work. We are finishing the JUICE mission to go to explore the icy moon of Jupiter. This thing is going to travel for years. It has to work when it arrives on site, and there is no way to come back. We are going to collect the samples of Perseverance on Mars and get them back to us. I can tell you this is not something easy. And again, when we sell a satellite or a service to a company or to a government, they expect a reliable service for 10 to 15 years. And this is requiring a very long investment from companies. And I would say that the space segment is one thing, but the ground segment is as important as the space segment. In the system I'm selling today, the ground segment weight is about equivalent to the space segment in terms of complexity, in terms of artificial intelligence on board, of cyber. So the barrier to entry is really high. There are many guests around the table to make it happen. It's not a bubble. Many will not survive, but the business will grow. So I think the good ones will survive and will develop. We are monitoring them. We are scouting them because we want to attract them into this. So I'm extremely confident about the future and the positive aspect of the business in space. I'm now completely convinced, especially after COVID time, that this is a nice area to operate with. But yes, there are many initiatives, and not all of them will go to fruition. But that's life of business. It happens everywhere. So let's continue to work. And it's a message to the innovators and startups that want to operate into this, just to tell them that there is a big gap between just doing a satellite and delivering a system which delivers a 15-year service to a very demanding user. I take the example of Galileo, for example. You know, it's not something you can do just like this. You know, it's complex. It has to work for long, and there are billions of people depending on it. So you cannot imagine that we stop. But there is here. It's more complicated. But the market is there. There is no way back. It's good for all of us.
Okay. Well, I think we will finish with this positive note in terms of confidence in the future and in the business in general. So thank you very much, Jean-Marc, for being with us today and having shared your thoughts about sustainability.